Hello, welcome back. It's B-Ball Joe. Today, Transport Fever 2 with more testing. I had a lot of conversations on the Steam forum about what I did wrong, what I could have done different, what you like, what you didn't like. I'll try to address that today, at least in parts. Stay tuned. So to start out, I adjusted the first thing that most of you, or that some of you pointed out. My rates at the end were not the same. We're not even close to equal. They changed after vehicles got on the road, after they started moving, after they started importing. So instead of trying to start out from the depot, I just have a rolling start this time. With the rolling start, my rate is more predictable, and I adjusted all of them so that we have a rate that's relatively close. And plus minus 5 feels pretty good here. This is plus minus 2, plus minus 6, and plus minus 2. That feels pretty close and should give us a better picture of what's actually happening. Another thing I changed was also adjust the cars a little bit, meaning the Baldwin, I added 2 gondolas to get a reasonable amount and a rate that made some sense in this scenario, and then I just adjusted the carts. The horse-drawn carriages were actually what's already dictated to 130, and I knew that was working. So that's why I adjusted there. On the 5,000 meters, there wasn't much to adjust, but I found out that using the modern roads actually puts in traffic lights everywhere where you have a truck stop, and you can't turn off the traffic lights there, which was kind of annoying, but that's what it is. So I deleted the truck stop exits everywhere where they're not used. You see the little bit of pathing here because the tendrils, but there's no more traffic lights where they're not required. And then at 2,000 meters, I adjusted trucks and train again a little bit. The train here, I didn't actually have to change much because it already had a great rate. And then the 1,000 meters, I had the 3.5 before, which is a way too big train for this era, for this few cars. So I adjusted that to be the 10-wheeler, which is about half the power, which means it should be a lot cheaper. Maybe give us a better approximation of what's a good train at this time period. Not just throwing money away for the 5.3. So I did that, and adjusted all the trucks to get close to what we see here, and that's what we're starting with. For the test itself, we will run 3 separate tests. All of them will be across 2 years, so we'll look at the first year because I'm not sure where we are currently in the profit cycle, and then we look at the second year for the actual money made. And that's what we're going to take. We will run this for easy, medium, and hard to see what the differences are for the different levels, and this will all be this test. And that's going to be the end of this video. After that, next week I will try to have another test that puts all the comparisons closer together and maybe gives us more insights on what's actually better if we look at the exact same scenarios, because here we obviously look at different times, different eras, different trains, different vehicles, and different lengths. And the different lengths is something I think we can address a little better than we have here, but I still want to know what we have here. So everything else is the same. I will just run these for all 3 difficulties and I'll report back to you. See you soon. So we are back. This is everything that I captured and a couple things that I calculated and everything that I've learned so far, and let me explain what happened. On the top, we have the trucks for the 4 different eras that we talked about before. The expenses, the rate, and the distance are always the same for each era. Just how it came out, I wasn't sure that the expenses were all the same, but they are, or pretty close, so we treat them as the same. And for train, same thing, expense, rate, distance. Then the income is the one that's actually variable and changes across easy, medium, and hard. So we take a closer look at that. And here the orange numbers are our actual calculations, and I'll tell you the formulas real quick. For profit, it's always just the income minus the expense. Super simple. For profit meter, I thought this was a nice formula to use. I'm just using how much profit do you make per meter if you go down to just a unit, if you wish. So our formula is pretty simple. F4, in this case, is the profit that we made, divided by the rate times the distance. So there's 132 units being shipped at a distance of 500 meters. Divide that, and then everything times 1,000, because everything you see is really 214,000, 531,000, 1.75 million, and so on. So everything is times 1,000. So just to get a right number, we multiply it by 1,000, and this is applied across everything. Plus, I was curious, what is the actual change versus easy when we compare them? And this is simply the income difference in percent. So it's the formula up here is 1 for 100% minus H4 is the income of right now divided by the income of easy. And that change, how much is that? Well, here are the numbers. Let me interpret them for you a little bit, and I'll tell you what I think of them. First, easy generally makes 20% more than medium and 40% more than hard. And that's a pretty standard across the board. For trucks, apparently it's a little different than for trains, but for trains it's a little more predictable. So you lose about 20% of your income the higher you go in your difficulties. And I think I read something like this somewhere before, but there you have it. 20% difference. Cool. Now we know that. The second thing that I didn't realize, as I told you before, expenses don't change. They always stay the same. The only thing that changes is your income. Okay, cool. Now we got that out of the way. The last thing, profits. Well, the profit depends directly on your income, so the profit goes down the harder you play. Cool. Nothing cool, nothing weird to see there. This, however, the profit meter, the function that I told you about before, is something that I found a little interesting and actually something that I want to work with. So, this is what we're going to compare. The profit per meter of the eras. 1850 on easy, we made 222 for the truck line that had the same rate or close rate to the same train that ran on the same distance. The train, however, made almost double the money, double the profit per meter. Interesting. If we look at 1900, the train made almost 3 times as much. Now, I switched the train here to a better version, a 10-wheeler. It has half the power and it costs about half the maintenance costs, so it made a lot more sense to use this one, so it's a more appropriate train. 3 times more. Then you have the 1950, the electric 4.4 versus the Studebakers, double again. And on the last one, it's not quite double, but it's pretty close, which this train in 2000 is just really beefy. What do we see? Across the board, it's pretty much true. It's not 100% true all the time, but 150 to $3, double. 170 to 433, more than double. 250 to 453, less than double, and so on. It is generally pretty close to, if you have a distance that makes sense and a rate that makes sense to use more than 1 or 2 trucks, you're probably at least doubling your reward, your profit, the whatever you want to call your money. I don't want to make any weird noises. That's stuff in my head that probably no one wants to hear. But there you have it. A train, most of the time, is probably a lot more profitable than a truck can be. And this is on an ideal situation. So that's something that someone pointed out in our discussions, that I should look at the trains when they run the same distance, at the trucks when they run the same distance, when it goes uphill, when it goes downhill. All these things. This is an idealized situation where everyone has the same starting conditions and everything is the same. I am assuming, and I don't know if this is true, so one of you may be able to test that if we start adding inclines or declines or more traffic or curves or other things to this setup, that as long as it's even, that we do it on the rail line as well as on the truck line, that we will see a very similar picture, that nothing changes there. All I'm trying to look at here is, when is a truck better than a train? And the answer is very, very soon. The only thing I feel is worth mentioning, the rate that I have here is 130, or the lowest rate I have is 130. So if your rate is above 100, you probably want to use a train. If your rate is much below 100, you probably want to use a truck like 50. If it's between 50 and 100, it's probably a toss-up. Maybe we'll figure that out sometime later. Maybe you will figure it out and let me know. I'll be excited to hear from you. But that's all I have. I hope I cleared a couple things up that I didn't clear up last time. I hope I answered a couple questions. I am not sure if I'm going to come back to this anytime soon, but if I find something that I really feel like we should address differently, I totally will come back to this and we'll fix it. The map right now is out on the Steam Workshop, just Bebo Joe's test map flat. Find it, play with it, see if you like it, see if you don't like it. It's out there to play with, so have fun. You know how the YouTube works. If you like what you saw, click all the buttons. Come back next time. Hope you learned something. I had fun. Hope you did too. Bye.